Where do you want to be in like 10 days versus where do you want to be in 10 years?
One of the most influential things that I've heard of college athletes.
Taking care of the necessities before you start taking care of all the leisure activities. I was just looking for anything and everything. I don't care if it's cash, free product, send me a sock and I'd be like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
What's going on, family? Welcome to another edition of the Athlete's Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host and creator, Alex Turner. And here on this podcast, we talk about how college athletes can master branding and marketing and start their own business in the NIL space. Today, I have an amazing guest with me. I have my guy, Jack. If you aren't familiar with who he is, I like to call him the leading experts per se in NIL when it comes to some of the D2 and D3 schools, because I know that is something that's a bit difficult to navigate because NIL is such an early stage. So how you doing, Jack? I appreciate you coming on today.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So before we really delve in, can you just kind of give a quick background of who you are, kind of your journey, and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Certainly, yeah. What's up, everybody? Jack Betts, senior wide receiver, Amherst football, way up in Western Massachusetts. I'm actually from Dallas, Texas, grew up here my entire life. I'm majoring in English and Native American studies, which, funny enough, every time somebody asks that, they're like, how in the world did you get into the world of marketing and sports advertising? But it's really a whirlwind of a story. I got pretty lucky with my first NIL deal actually coming to me in January of 2022, about 6 months after legislation was approved. So 17, 18 months later, you see what's in front of you today.
I like it. And I guess a good place to start off is, what was that first NIL deal that came to you, and kind of walk us through the process of how that happened and whatnot?
Absolutely. To really get to that point, I've got to do a little bit of a preface. That spring of 2022, goodness gracious, that was a long time ago, I actually decided to take a gap semester from Amherst. I was scheduled to study abroad in Rome with a bunch of my teammates, but unfortunately those plans fell through. What a lot of folks in my grade and on my football team did is actually take a gap semester like spring of 2021 as a result of our football season being canceled the year before as a result of COVID. So as a means of sort of getting that fourth year back, people took gap semesters. I didn't know if that was going to be for me. I thought I was going to graduate. I should have graduated this spring, but instead, because of that gap semester, I'm graduating in December. So really, I was just looking for something to keep me busy. I get this DM on Instagram. You know how it is. When you have a private account, at that point, I must have had 2,000 followers. And at this company called Lifestyle Bands, which I still rock them to this day, I'll give them a quick shout out right there. They reached out to me and essentially said, would you be interested in joining our student athlete ambassador crew? I sat with it. I've got two parents as lawyers, so I have pretty good legal counsel in my corner. And I sat with it, talked it through with them, and decided what's the worst that can happen. And I got super lucky. It's not often that a smaller division or a smaller market, lower division athlete such as myself has something like that fall into their lap. But boy, I'm sure glad that it did.
I like it. And I wanted to touch on a few things you said. I'm taking notes as we talk.
Absolutely.
I like to not miss points. So the first question is, how long did that NIL deal last? Was it a one-off? Was it something that was continuous, or maybe it's still continuing? How did that kind of go for you?
Yeah, I think it's one of my longest running ones. Obviously, with being my first one, it's going to be in chronological order the longest one, but it's still going strong today. It's an ambassador affiliate type deal, so they send me free product in exchange for some promotion on my social media channels. And as well, if somebody uses my link or uses my code, I get a little percentage of that sale. So it's still going strong. Sometimes I'll have something pop up in my PayPal that says, oh, Lifestyle Bands is paying you a little commission. So it's still going strong today, and I can't complain. That's a little passive income opportunity.
So I want to delve into, I feel like you are uniquely positioned to have a slight advantage, right? And there's nothing wrong with having slight advantages, but the fact that both of your parents are lawyers, I find that, for one, amazing, but two, I feel like it gives you advantage because a lot of things that I've heard college athletes say through the NIL space is that two biggest disadvantages that they have, whether they knew it originally or not, was understanding contracts and taxes. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I feel like obviously having lawyers as parents, that helps when it comes to understanding the contract aspect. So how did they help you through that process? And just kind of give like a tip for, everybody watching here that might not necessarily have legal representation as of right now.
100%. I mean, as you mentioned, they were extremely integral in my success, leading me to this point. You know, I've got a portfolio of around 40-ish partnerships, and I wouldn't have been able, I wouldn't have been able to negotiate. I wouldn't have been able to review those contracts without them. That's what they do for a living, after all. So really, all that I can recommend is just be intentional. Make sure that you don't just like, okay, yeah, just you have no idea what you're going to be signing off. So make sure you read the fine print. I know not everybody has lawyers as parents, which, you know, sometimes might be a good thing. But yeah, it's just really important to be intentional. Make sure that you know what you're going to be giving away in this type of exchange when you go into partnership with a company of sorts. So it is really important to be cognizant of the possible. You have no idea what you can be signing away sometimes.
I agree. Entrepreneur mindset is on a whole nother level, and you have to think and view things differently. So kind of give me a little bit of the insights on how you keep an entrepreneur mindset while reaching out to these companies.
That entrepreneurial mindset, which of course I got to credit to my parents. You know, my mother's very entrepreneurial. It feels like every single night while we're watching television, maybe she's just working on her phone, you know, setting up deals. So I will credit them with it. I don't think I was born with it, but who knows? But yeah, that entrepreneurial mindset, and just that mindset of not taking no for an answer. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in this process. At one point, I was sending off like 10 to 15 emails per day. I think in like February and March, at the height of my inquiries, just sending them out. I can't remember how many no's that I've gotten. And when you look at the amount of yeses that I've gotten and you think about that proportionally, you know, that's just one major life lesson that I've learned right there. You're going to get no, you're going to be told no, but you can't take that as a final answer. You've got to persevere. You got to keep going. And that's really like one of the founding tenets of every single entrepreneur: perseverance, you know, keep going in the face of adversity. But it did take a lot of commitment and investment in myself to get to this point. And so I think really the thing that set me apart, obviously, is my approach. Being a Division III athlete in a Division I dominated field, that was a pretty good selling point. And sometimes some companies didn't take the bait, but most times companies were like, okay, yeah, we'll take a chance on a small Division III kid out of Western Massachusetts. What's the worst that can happen? Thank goodness they did. I'll tell you that.
I like it. YOL Academy, which is Make Your Own Legacy Academy, right?
Correct.
How did that come about, and what is your vision for that?
So the Make Your Own Legacy Academy, I'll just give our viewers a quick rundown. The Make Your Own Legacy Academy is a first of its kind NIL education solution founded primarily on the basis of helping the underserved and smaller market athlete fully realize their true NIL potential. It really came about in, I want to say, April of 2022, when as I began to establish myself as a decent name, have a little weight to my name in the NIL game, these athletes from similar markets, you know, smaller divisions, started reaching out to me. And I kind of said to myself, okay, what if there was a more formalized approach to NIL education for these smaller market athletes who don't have these type of resources? And in August of 2022, we launched our first cohort of athletes, which consisted of 21 athletes, obviously an ode to the number I wear on the field. And within the Make Your Own Legacy Academy, I oversee the education of all 50, and I educate them in everything from that cold email approach, you know, my two-headed monster approach, as aforementioned, you know, negotiation process, which is something that's really important, especially within NIL, content creation, all sort of on the basis of the great majority of us are not going to be playing our sport professionally. So we've got to begin thinking about pivoting. We've got to begin thinking about developing these professional skills and building that professional network that's going to be beneficial in, 5-10 years time. We do have one guy who is in the NFL right now, actually, Ellis Merriweather. I'll give a shout out to my boy Ellis.
Nice.
He went to the University of Massachusetts, which is right down the street from me in Amherst College. So that's the Make Your Own Legacy Academy.
I love it. So where do you see that growing to, let's just say within the next year?
Great question. People always ask me, what do you want to do with this? Like, why are you even doing it in the first place? And I always tell them, I have a really deep background in education, and two of my favorite things and two of the founding tenets that make up who is Jack Betts. And education is one of, if not the most important thing that you're going to be doing throughout life, whether it be attaining education yourself or educating others. And so I don't know, I want to keep growing the academy. I want to get as many small market and underserved athletes in it as possible. But there are some scalable opportunities. Maybe it's one size fit all. Maybe some people have reached out to me inquiring whether or not I'm interested in writing some sort of book. We'll just have to see.
That'll be exciting to see how that works out for you, man. I'm definitely excited to see that. How do you create your content? Like, what do you do to make the process easier for you? Because creating content can be easy for some people and it can be difficult for others.
I will tell you, I do draw great inspiration, certainly at the height of content creation. I have drawn great inspiration from some of my Division I counterparts. Maybe I can take an element from this piece of content, take an element from this piece of content, and really put it together. But it is difficult as a Division III athlete because my platform isn't going to be as large as, Bryce Young's or Caleb Williams. So I've got to really find a way in which I can work my niche and really make it work for me. And oftentimes I just sort of aim to create content that, I don't know, obviously brands would enjoy, but maybe people my age would sort of find funny. Exactly, the engagement. So sometimes, maybe if this video didn't do as well, why would this one have differentiated from this one? But it really is a game in which most times you're just rolling the dice. So the more content you create, I guess the greater chance that you're going to have that something hits.
I like that. Just want to ask, are you able to just kind of give a bit of insight on just investing in money management in the NIL space?
I think it is part of the contract where I can't necessarily endorse any specific tools. So unfortunately, the best advice I can give is I've been fortunate enough that my family's accountant sort of takes care of all my taxes and everything. But one of the biggest points that I really hit hard on is beginning to think about, okay, where do you want to be in like 10 days versus where do you want to be in 10 years? If you begin sort of saving today, then 5 years in the future, you're really going to thank yourself, your past self. So just, make sure that whatever income that you do have during this period, you're spending it smartly, you're using it intentionally and intelligently. And, equally just make sure that you're taking care of the necessities before you start taking care of all the leisure activities.
I like it. That generally, if somebody says yes to what you offer so quickly, that means more than likely they were probably willing to give you a little more, right? So because businesses generally start with a lower offer, right? But unless you have that dominating of a brand presence already where you drop the name, everybody already kind of knows who you are, right? You have to kind of, give a little bit of leeway, but
yes,
closed mouths don't get fed, right? I was always told that. So
amen.
Why not go ahead and just kind of ask for what you really want, or maybe even up it a notch. So if they, like you said, if they happen to say yes, you just got more than you were originally expecting. And if they say no, now you can work them down, right? Like it's all the art of negotiating, right? Like, you want to ask for more so you can make them wiggle down to what you really wanted to begin with.
Absolutely. This free game right here. I hope everybody's taking notes at home.
Look, note takers are money makers, okay? So I hope y'all are taking notes because he's been saying a lot of amazing things as well. So kind of go into the sponsorship aspect, right? Because not many people, of course, there's brand partnerships and ambassadorships and things like that. But once you start building a relationship with these brands, you can then start having them maybe even sponsor some of your events. Like you just said, as far as a meeting, right? Like they were able to just sponsor 50 cookies. So kind of talk a bit about the sponsorship aspect of NIL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really the only type of encounter that I've had that begins sort of descending or ascending, if you will, into the sponsorship aspect of things, just because of, I think that makes the most sense. Insomnia Cookies, it's right in town, super popular spot. And it looks pretty good when you're, sponsoring the student athletes of color, get together. So that's really the main one that comes to mind. I know I've had some conversations with the Own It group who kind of does all the analytical side of things on the data that they receive from the Whoop. And we had some discussions regarding sort of an incubator with the Amherst football team. Nothing's come to fruition quite yet, but we are still going to have those conversations. I think it would be really beneficial. That would really be beneficial for everybody, not only for the coaches, but especially the players. I think sponsorship is definitely something that I really want to work towards that begins benefiting more and more people who are in my closer circles. And there have been some sponsorship inquiries regarding the Make Your Own Legacy Academy. As my journey has continued. And as I've began to really establish myself, not only in the NIL world, but really in the sports business world, which is a career that I certainly think I want to go into, how can I begin using these strategic NIL partnerships and move towards sponsorships, as you mentioned?
I like that. I like that. And one last question that I just kind of wanted to round it off about, right? How is it being a student athlete in the NIL era in general?
It's a lot of fun. I'll tell you that. I think the word that always comes to mind when people are like, how do you balance the student athlete entrepreneur life? And the word that comes to mind is compartmentalization. As a student athlete, that's one of the skills we learn. So beginning to really understand and moving in ways that, okay, I've got this much time during the day to go to class. I've got this much time during the day to go to practice. And then when can I find time to work in the entrepreneurial side of things? As I mentioned, my NIL career began in a gap semester. So I had no academic commitments. I had no formal athletic commitments. Obviously, I was still working out. But I think it gave me the unique opportunity in which I could build my brand with zero other commitments. I could just solely focus on using those 8 months, obviously we reported in August, but it has been definitely different. So it's all about making sure that you know how to balance your time. It isn't for everybody. I know some folks who were really interested in NIL, and then they just straight up told me, I just don't think I have the time for it. So making sure that you can balance your time, making sure that you understand that it is a commitment and you have a commitment to these brands to fulfill the agreements that you formally agreed upon. But yeah, it's just training you for later in life, because life's not going to slow down after college. I can tell you that.
Exactly. And it's crazy that you said that not every athlete has the time to do so.
Yeah.
I think that's important for athletes to kind of look at, right? Like, where do you see yourself in X amount of years, and how does what you're doing now, whether that's, any extra clubs you're in, how does that play a part in, the latter end in your overall goal? So is there any last piece of information or gems that you might want to share with the audience that's watching, especially with your unique perspective of being a D3 athlete and being able to accrue so many deals?
I think the biggest piece of advice, and something I always love to leave these sorts of podcast opportunities with, is the number one thing that I always tell athletes that just want a little bit of advice. You've got to be proactive. Of course, I say that, and my first NIL deal just happened to fall on my lap. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But yeah, you've really got to be proactive, because if you're coming from a similar situation such as mine, these companies aren't just going to reach out to you all willy-nilly. You aren't going to have that, great game on Saturday and then wake up on Sunday morning with 50 emails from, major companies asking if you want to go into partnership with them. You've got to be proactive. You've got to be your own advocate, because at the end of the day, nobody else is going to do it for you. Like you said, closed mouths don't get fed. So you've got to go out there, you've got to hustle, and you've got to get it done yourself, because that's really the only way that it's going to happen. So
I like it. I like it. And where can they find you at if they wanted to, reach out to you, or maybe apply to be in the next round of your Make Your Own Legacy Academy?
Absolutely. Yeah. My Instagram is going to be the best place to find me. I'm at jbetts21, BETTS is my last name. Also my website, jack-betts.com. There's a little inquiry form that you can fill out at the very bottom. If you want to get in contact with me, that's an easy way to get my email. And then finally, the Make Your Own Legacy Academy's Instagram at the MYOL Academy. That's how you can find me. I'm always next to my phone. I mean, I've got my phone right here, just watching just in case. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I love making new friends and really expanding that network. So,
hey, well, I appreciate you so much, Jack, for being able to join the show today. It truly has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, of course. And look, if you have not already, go ahead and, for one, follow Jack, because he truly is an amazing person, amazing athlete, and he won the Hustle Award for a reason. So go ahead and make sure you follow my guy, Jack. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this video, and we'll see you next week. Let's go.